Hello everyone, welcome back to Channel Led Bryon Lape Reads, and here we are back to Nerd Corner and some technical stuff. You know, I've seen all kinds of articles. We've even covered some of the languages to learn in the next 5 years, the popular languages. But what about programming languages that developers just dislike? Okay. In my background, I've used many languages, and I have not used Python. And I know that's very, very popular. I've used a tiny bit of PHP, but not much. I didn't really like PHP. I liked Perl back in the day. I still like it in many ways. I've, forgotten a lot of syntax, things like that. But one of the things that when I got out of programming for about 10 years, about 12, 13 years ago, I didn't miss it. And I didn't realize until I went back to it, why? Because I was doing a lot of Java at the time. And because I had come to hate that language and I didn't realize it. And then when I had to go back and use it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it feels so clunky. C# is so much cleaner. I don't miss C++. I know these are some of these ones mentioned here in the title. So languages that I do not like that I've used in the past. C++ is one of, C is a bit, it's a bit, I don't know, feels old. Fortran 77 is one I used many, many years ago, and I've been kind of wanting to explore that one again. But haven't fully done that. But Java is one, and I can understand why Scala and other languages, because the JVM is still a powerful concept. Although now there's the LLVM and other languages that have pulled to it. There are languages, like F# that deal with the .NET platform as well. So I would say of all the languages I've used, Java's one I probably dislike the most. So let's see what other developers say. As more organizations turn to data analytics for optimizing operations, developer demand only heightens. Working with programming languages is embedded in the job, with Python, Java, and JavaScript being some of the most widely used. Well, those languages, this is from Tech Republic. Sorry about that. Looks like Macy Bairn in developer. And this is not Macy. And they're talking about the more popular ones. So, anyway, very strange that put that video in there. That does not mean that they most love. Java and JavaScript are actually two of the least favored languages according to professional developers. Now that JavaScript I find interesting. I used to work with some, I haven't done a whole lot of hardcore JavaScript in probably almost 20 years, but I really liked it as a language because I liked it as a prototyping, dynamically typed language. And that's the way I wrote in it. And a lot of Java developers do not. This may be an unpopular opinion due to JavaScript's immense in popularity, but it's often quite a mess to work in. And that it can be because it's a scripting language. So many times scripting languages allow you to do stupid things like global variables and a bunch of other nonsense. And if you write it that way, it can be a nightmare. By design, JavaScript encourages anti-patterns such as the use of global variables. Well, it doesn't encourage, it allows it because it's a scripting language. JavaScript type coercion approach often baffles developers when the results are unexpected. Again, this is because they're not coding properly. They're just hacking stuff together and then it doesn't work and they wonder why. As for Java, the code is unsustainable. Now, that's the first I've ever, I just think it's ugly and very wordy. No auto getters and setters and all kinds of stuff. But it was a response to C++ basically letting you overload everything, which basically swung the pendulum way too far. And this tried to put it in the middle. And hard to maintain. The irony is that it was designed with the goal of making it easy to maintain with large teams. I would like to see a little bit, Thomas, maybe there's more to that quote. I'd like to know what his evidence is, what he means by unsustainable. Every programming language has its own purpose, and oftentimes language usage depends on the context. Yeah. And that's why I think people don't like, this is why TypeScript, or is it TypeScript? TypeScript's a font, TrueScript and what's the other one that's very popular? Because people don't write JavaScript properly. It all depends what you need to do. If you want to write more performance optimizing to run an OS, run on an OS, I'd appreciate a lot of C++ gives you. If I wanted to write a kernel, you could do C, yep. And if you really needed, simpler is still around. However, there are common qualities that make one language better to work with another. An ideal language has straightforward syntax, a strong set of core libraries, and doesn't bury you in unnecessary complexity. Yeah, and I think many ways most languages have that, except maybe, well, there's Fortran and COBOL have their complexities, but that's the target audience is our non, Fortran was made for engineers who aren't necessarily programmers. And so they needed those bounding boxes. COBOL was made for business-oriented people, and they need those bounding boxes. Provide you with enough flexibility to solve problems in different ways, but also provide you with easy implementation features in the event you want to default to the language's optimal, opinionated implementation. At its core, a solid programming language is one that is easy to work with. I don't know about that. I've worked with some languages that were a pain, but they were pretty solid. Why do I really dislike Java? Because I am not very good at it. Well, wait a minute. Is this the same guy who said it made it? Yeah. Well, if you're not very good at it, you're going to think it's unsustainable. Okay. Very few languages are fundamentally good or bad, and the creation of programming language is so complex that you quickly need to start to make compromises. The best quality of a language is that it is understandable, that the developer knows it, and the developer, well, this is just stupid. Python was a clear crowd favorite among most of these developers. The best language is usable, consistent, and transferable to other developers. Simplicity wins. The whole point of programming language is to get the most out of the computer and the developer. If you can do this, it's a good language. Well, I think Java fits the bill. I think it's just you don't know it very well, Mr. Hatch, and that's why you think it's unsustainable. But if you know the language, it's not so difficult. But I will say this, and C# also suffers from this. Many of the things added in the last few years to Java, the syntax is really being stretched to make it work. With some of these now, granted, the concepts were around. I mean, object-oriented programming, true object-oriented programming, and functional programming, all that, they've been around since the 50s and 60s. But there wasn't really this mixed mode that we're getting more and more into, with the exception of maybe Algol and Lisp back in the 60s. Most languages were pretty much, I'm in this camp, I'm either structured or I'm functional or whatever. That is why I like Python so much. It's easy to develop with, and few Python developers write code that is difficult to pass on to another developer. Now, I will say that many times depends, I guess, on the concepts you're using. Things like lambdas and stuff like that in C# and Java really can mess people up. There's some things that can happen in C++, sometimes multiple inheritance, and some other things can be a pain. So, again, though, a lot of it is just the way the code's expressed, and that is not the default of the language. When you write better, more concise code that's more expressive in any language, it's much easier to pass on to developer. If there's a lot of just hidden assumptions that a new developer would know, it wouldn't matter what language it was written in, it would be difficult. Now, like I said, I've never written in Python, so maybe it doesn't maybe it's more expressive from the start, which would be fine. But that's... Anyway, let's see can I show the comments? Are there? Okay, here we go. The programming language I've hated the most is APL. Oh yeah, that's I've had a very little experience with it, but my goodness. My brother was an expert in it, but I found it unreadable, very powerful in its day. Okay, my two favorite, COBOL and BASIC. I've used BASIC in a bunch of different ways. RISC Alpha, essentially okay. Anyway, this going on and on about their past. How did they get to this? The articles about the best program language, not the ones that right. GoTo was great. Hated Visual Basic because it was C in disguise. No, I will say this: Visual Basic felt odd. I wouldn't say it's C in disguise, but its syntax felt like this is it. Basically, it stretched the base syntax too far, and no, Quick Basic wasn't. Oh, Visual Basic. What am I thinking of? Well, yeah, I don't know. The worst programming language at all times has to be mumps, which later evolved into M. Absolutely impossible to maintain. Systems tend to be very fast. In fact, I don't think it's a frontal aggression to software engineering. Yeah, that's probably true. Meaning if variable I is non-null, go to label L. What no Ada and no these are obscure languages no one uses. That's why in-depth discussion about the most hated languages and why developers hate them. Well, there are two of the three sentences actually address the topic. Clickbait. Yep. Yeah. So Mr. Hatch here doesn't like Java because he doesn't know it, And that's not, although I will say some of the general ideas here, but again, I think a lot of it depends on the language and what is the going philosophy of the day. When structured programming was the norm, Pascal and PL1, and what was the one that came out of Pascal? It's Modula 2. Very, very popular languages. Pascal was a popular language for years when training new developers because of its syntax, because it had very strict boundaries. And but when Pascal got added, we started to have object-oriented concepts put into it. Didn't do so well because it wasn't really meant for that. And that may be a reflection too on more modern languages that have this mixed mode. They're going to tend to do one better than the other. But because you don't have to pound all that crap on top of the syntax, it's all thought of at the beginning, then its syntax can be kind of clearer, and we can go from there. C++, right, driving out of C. Objective-C has a lot of the same problems, but now we have Swift for doing things on Mac OS. So I think that I think what it sounds like is just any language that's 20 years old or more, and there's been a paradigm shift, that it is really pulling it out of its element. I think that's what you're feeling here. This is why Scala, for instance, is a better way to do functional programming on the JVM. So what do you think of this article? Do you think it's clickbait? Do you think that it's of any value? I just think it's, Python. Now, granted, Python is from the late 90s, but it had some things that are now avant-garde back in the day. So we'll see. What do you think of the article? Do you think it's just stupid? Do you think it's just a way it's an SEO article disguised as a regular article? It might be. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much, and we will see you. Goodbye. Come on. Gee whiz, this thing. Yeah, I don't know if it's the dust is getting in this thing or it's just, who knows. It's getting really crappy. Let's turn that other thing down. All right, that sounds good. All right, 3, 2, 1.